So let's start talking about what is access control. So what is access control? Access control is, like I said, if you have a computer, how does it actually put the data on the wire? How does it access this wire, and how does it do it, and what type of control do we have? Okay, now when we're talking about control, I want you guys to start thinking a little bit more technical. Remember, we have a cable, and we've learned that this cable will carry a voltage. This voltage will represent either a 1 or a 0. Now, if I have a big cable and I've got multiple devices connected to that cable, this cable can only carry one signal at a time. Because again, think of this in a logical way. If I have a extension cable that I use at home to plug in a light or my TV, whatever, that cable will only carry one voltage. Most likely 220 volts because we're here in South Africa. This cable doesn't carry 220 volts and 100 volts and 50 volts. No, it can't do that. It can only carry one voltage or one signal at any point in time. So if I have a network with computers and I have a cable that connects all of these computers together, okay, like we just learned, can only carry one signal. So if computer A is sending data to computer B, it has to put the signal on the cable, and then that signal has to travel to computer B. But while computer A to B is sending data to one another, I can't have computer F and computer G transmit data because there's already a signal on the cable. It's already carrying a voltage. So what access control actually means is who decides who can send data. So this is what we call media access control. Who decides who is going to send data at this point in time? Is it computer A to B, or is it computer F to G? Who is actually going to do it? Now, in networking, there are three main access control methods that we are going to be looking at. Okay, the first one is called CSMA/CD. Then we've one called CSMA/CA. And then lastly, we're going to be looking at something called token ring. So these are the three main ways that data is controlled when it's sending or receiving. So we're going to start with the first one, CSMA/CD. So let's have a look at it. First of all, we need to know that CS stands for something called carrier sense. MA stands for multiple access, and CD stands for collision detection. So what does this mean? CS, carrier sense, it can sense if the cable is being used. So it knows that the cable is already being used by another device, so I cannot send or receive data. Multiple access just means that we can have multiple PCs send data at the same time. Okay, because remember, we can have the situation where we have 4 computers wanting to send data. Okay, computer 1 and 3 wants to send, and computer 2 and 4 want to send data. So what we can have, when they want to send data, computer 1 and computer 2, they can do this at the same time. So because they're sending data at the same time, they won't detect that anybody else is sending data because nobody else is sending data at that point in time. They're doing it at the exact same time. So what will happen if we have two pieces of data traveling down the wire? We have what we call a collision. And that's where the last part then comes in. Collision detection. It will detect that a collision has occurred. Two computers try to send data at the same time, and it will then basically say, hey, this is not correct. Two of us tried to talk at the same time. We collided with each other, so now one of us have to back off, and the other one has to send data. So this is CSMA CD. If I do it in a little bit of a different way, so let's say this is my network, okay, and on my network I've got multiple computers, and these computers are connected to one another with a single wire, okay. We've got computer A, B, C, and D. Computer A wants to send data to computer C, and computer B wants to send data to computer D. Because we have carrier sense, CS, step one will be both computers will listen to see if the cable is used or not. Okay, because the cable is free, because nobody is sending data, both of them will try to send data. And that's where we get the MA, or the multiple access part. But because we learned that if two computers send data on the cable at the same time, we will have a collision. Okay. And then we have the collision detection part that will kick in. And it will detect that, hey, a collision has occurred. So I'm going to tell both computers to back off, stop sending data. Okay. And then wait for, let's say it's right over here because I'm going into my camera. We'll wait for a random time. So I'll tell this guy, you back off and you wait for 1 second before you send data again. You back off and you wait for 2 seconds before you try to send data again. After the 1 second, computer A will use the carrier sense part to sense if the cable is free or not. If it is, it will send its data to computer C. While computer A is sending data, computer B now wants to send data, so it will use the carrier sense part to sense if the cable is available. It's not, because computer A is sending data to computer C, so it will wait until the cable is clear, and then it will send its data. Okay. If two computers send data at the same time, we then have a collision, which will be detected by the collision detection part, and they'll tell one computer to back off for a random amount of time, 1 second, 2 seconds, half a second, whatever, and the other computer must also back off for a random amount of time, and then you can try to send data again. So that is CSMA CD, or carrier sense multiple access with collision detection. A close cousin of that one is one called CSMA/CA, where it's carrier sense multiple access, but this time with collision avoidance. So unlike the other one, that first of all will send data and then afterwards pick up if there has been a collision, this one will avoid the collision in the first place. So how that works is if we have the 4 computers connected to one single cable. Computer A wants to send data to computer D, and computer B wants to send data to computer C. What this will do is before it sends the actual data, it will send a little piece of what we call a preamble. Okay. Now this is just a very fancy term for a very small piece of, how can I say, not important data. So it will try and send this small piece of data first. If this small piece of data can be transmitted, okay, then it will send the actual data afterwards. If the small piece of data collides with another piece of data, it knows that the cable is busy and it will back off before it sends the actual data. Okay, so 2 very similar concepts, but the way that they handle collisions are a little bit different. Another way you can think of the difference between these two, let's say you have a highway with cars driving on the highway. Okay, so I know it's not a very pretty highway, but imagine this is a highway. You need to get from this side to the other side. With collision detection, the CD part, you will just start walking. If you get hit by a car, you have a collision, you'll just get up, go back, and try again after a couple of seconds. At some point, you are going to make it across. It's going to be clear, there's going to be no cars, but you might get a couple of collisions before that. With collision avoidance, again, we have the same highway. You want to get to the other side, but before you go across, you send your little brother across first. Okay, if your little brother makes a collision, he comes back and you send him again until your little brother makes it across. Then you know that it's good for you to do the same thing and cross the highway. Okay, so those are the first 2 types of media access methods. The third one is something called token ring. And a token ring is where you have basically, again, the same network. But now, instead of anybody just sending data, we don't have multiple access. Okay, so multiple access is not there. We now only have what we call single access. And the way that it does that is it's got a little token. Okay, think of the token as a little boat. This boat needs to have the data put onto it. Then the boat can travel on the network to the destination. Okay, there's only one token, so that means it's only one signal on the cable at any point in time, meaning that there are no collisions whatsoever. Okay,